So I'm an artist and a musician. Live in Balsall Heath. My band is called the Army of the Broken Hearted, and I'm a writer. And I've done a lot of thinking as regards how do artists in the present circumstance make art that has the capacity to change normal life in some way. So you have to pardon my scripted speech. I've got into writing speeches recently. So this is just what happens now. There's a lot of pessimism here about rebellion and revolution. So without wishing to pile too much more on and plummet us into greater misery, I want to make a particular connection that I think is important. The concept of revolution today, when you hear the word revolution, it normally refers to some kind of technological development, that cars have got faster, or broadband's got faster, or the iPod has got smaller, or the television has more channels. And it usually means, well, all this means, whatever else it means, that the people who sit in power in the media have greater control over the cultural life of everybody else. So these revolutions are little tools that help the powerful stay powerful. When we hear the word rebellion, we're usually thinking of somebody wearing a t-shirt, as was shown earlier. We're usually thinking of a well-dressed individual who has a screw-you look on their face. And what this tends to equate to is the capitalist ethic of self-interest being sold to and drilled into young people by a small handful of profiteers. So the language of revolution and rebellion have been co-opted into the consumer capitalist machine. I'm sure there's huge discussions we could have about capitalism. I won't go into it here. I'm probably coming from the place where it's a structure that I consider to be oppressive. But yeah, revolution and rebellion are very much part of that machine. I think popular artists in particular, have been oddly uncritical of the situation, or even complicit. We artists are looked to produce this fodder of rebellion, this idea of revolution that's everywhere without actually changing anything. So there's the gloom. I'm a person who wants to see revolution of some kind in the social, political, cultural sense. I would love to see widespread change in my lifetime, and in a small way. I think that's what I work towards. But I think the first question we should probably ask ourselves as artists is whether we think there is cause for revolution in the structures that we live in, or whether acts of rebellion are really called for in the situation that we live in. Because if we wave the terms around without really having a thought-through conviction that something needs to change in some way, then we only wear out the terms more. All I want to do today is to suggest two principles that I think are necessary to rescue popular art from impotence, to give us the possibility of cultivating change in the situations we live in. The first is, I think, the actual and local manifestation of our work, the presentation of our work in its most elemental form in the geographical place that it actually came from, amongst the people that it actually came amongst, is it needs to take primacy over its mediation, its further mediation out there amongst people that we don't know, in places that we haven't been. The local manifestation is more important than the mediation of the work by mass mediums. The revolution will not be televised, says Gil Scott Heron. if you'll pardon me wheeling out the cliche, but I think it's still true. That it's almost impossible for anything truly revolutionary to happen via mass mediums. Revolutions happen when real people really come together around really shared convictions and belief. And artists are one element of society that can bring about that kind of situation. Mass mediums, on the other hand, are tools of segregation. They keep each in his or her own private space. They keep people apart. Artists can bring people together around an idea, but only if we take the trouble and the work to think of our work, re-envision our work, organise our work in a way that makes it important and vital to the people that we show it to. Life is richer in time, space and matter. So we have the power to bring people together, or we can continue to create content for the structures that keep people apart. I have a manifesto about how I think art can work in this respect. I'll pass it around at the end. I won't do it now because you'll read it while I'm talking. But yeah, do look at that for elaboration on this. I think popular art, historically, since the 50s, is more or less synonymous with mass mediums through which they're sold. And I think that relationship needs to be broken in some way if we're to even begin feigning any interest in revolution with a big R. So, first, I think that we need to step down from our idolising the mass culture and think local and immediate. Second, I think that the focus of the artist, or the artist's fundamental purpose, needs to shift from self to other. The general assumption is that we artists do what we do because we want a career, we want to be able to make a living off of what we do, we want to be able to do what we do instead of having to do a day job. We want to build a cult around our brand, our work. We want our work to outlast us, and for there to be a cult around the work itself. And this is, to my mind, very much in the spirit of the capitalist spirit of self-interest, which is very unrevolutionary in the current circumstances. But more than that, this mindset of self-promotion strips our art, I think, of revolutionary potential. Things art can do. Art can function as an invitation to people. It can invite people to share a feeling, a sentiment, an experience, an idea. It can present people with a question and invite them to find answers for it. It can present people with problems and invite them to find solutions. It can present people with issues and invite people to discussion, dialogue. It can present people with a conviction and invite them to rise to it. It can invite people to critical consciousness, to solidarity, and even to action. But it can hardly do any of these things as long as the audience think that the art is making art for the sake of their own career. That the art is not really for them, but only for the artist who is building their own private empire. In this case, the people are not really invited to anything but to watch an individual climb the mountain of their own ego. More on this in the manifesto again. So I think art needs to become, and it doesn't have to, but if there is to be any talk of social change, revolution, art needs to become a pursuit for the blessing of community. We need to think of our work as gift, as grace, as nourishment for the people that we actually live amongst. Not the ones far away, the fans far away that we'll never meet, but the people that we actually share life with. The artist must deny self, pick up cross, and work for the blessing of the other. In my book, I talk about the idea that repentance is the revolution. The reason for this, I think, is because repentance is a rebellion against self, and self is the god of capitalism. So, there's the two principles I want to present to help us recover the revolutionary potential of art, to abandon our obsession with top-down mediums in favour of local manifestation of our work, and to abandon our obsession with career in favour of work that cultivates the life of the people that we live amongst.